Hello YouTube, how's it going? This is the crossover and I'm back with another video. Today is going to be another one of my individual scouting reports for the 2022 NBA draft. And in today's video, we're going to be taking a look at French guard Hugo Besson. So without any further delay, let's get straight into the video. Moving on to some stats regarding Hugo Besson, he is 20 years old, stands at about 6 feet 4 inches, weighs about 200 pounds, and has a 6 foot 6 inch wingspan. Now, regarding his wingspan, I couldn't find any exact measurements online. I checked a bunch of different databases, a bunch of different scouting sites, couldn't find any exact measurement. I even went through different forums on Reddit, could not find a single exact measurement for his wingspan. So that is something that we will have to pay attention regarding his athletic profile come the draft combine. However, I kind of landed on 6 feet 6 inches as a good wingspan for Hugo, as he definitely has a plus wingspan when you watch him play, but it's not the biggest wingspan ever. So I've landed on 6 feet 6 inches. You could tell me if you were to tell me it's 6 feet 7 inches, maybe 6'8", I'd be like, okay, but I kind of decided to land on like a safe estimate for his wingspan, and I landed at 6'6". So the decent physical profile. You like the height. Some people say 6'3", but I think he's a little bit taller than that. I say right around 6'4". Maybe he's a tall 6'3", but still decent physical profile for Hugo Besson. Not the biggest guard ever, but still decent physical profile. And this is his first year playing with the New Zealand Breakers, where he is averaging a very solid 13.9 points, 3.9 rebounds, 2.3 assists, and 0.6 steals per game. Now for the efficiency, it's bad. I'm not gonna lie. Where he is averaging, he does have a 38.6% field goal percentage and is shooting 79.5% from the free throw line, as well as 30.8% from the 3-point line. Now that field goal percentage is pretty ghastly, even though he is putting up a decent point total. That's just part and due to the volume or the amount of shots that he's getting up. You also have to keep in mind that this New Zealand Breaker team is absolutely awful. Watching film for not only him but for Osman Dieng, who we covered in the previous video. This is the worst team. This is one of the worst professional teams I think I've ever seen in my life. This New Zealand Breakers team this year is just that bad. So you have to keep in mind just the situation that he's in, and just the amount of shots that he's getting up. So is the field goal percentage something that we will talk about later? Yes, of course. Even though the 3-point percentage isn't necessarily bad, and you also have to keep in mind that the free throw percentage is pretty solid as well. So it indicates that he could be a good shooter later on in his career. And the shooting again is something that we will talk about later. But that field goal percentage is definitely something that we will talk about later on in the video. Moving on to Hugo Besson's strengths as a prospect. First up, I do want to talk about his ball handling and just his handle overall. And I think he has a very solid hand. I think, in my opinion, he has one of the better handles in this class. I think he's definitely in that top echelon of players in terms of just being able to break down defenders and just have a variety of different moves that they can get to. In that aspect, Hugo Besson definitely ranks towards the top tier of prospects in this class. He has a different variety of hezzies that he likes to get to, and he does a great job of changing his speeds as well. What he really likes to do is he'll hit an opponent with a crossover, and then he'll kind of step back like he's going to fake the shot, and then he'll hezzy. So it's kind of like he'll step and then he'll kind of like go up and you'll hit them with the hezzy. It's a very, very impressive move when you consider that, he's only 20 years old. You have to keep in mind that a lot of these kids are just so young, right? I say that as I am 18, but, still, uh, just being 20 years old and being able displaying that level of polish in terms of, again, change of speeds, being able to lull defenders to sleep with different hezzies and whatnot, different crossovers, it's very impressive. And this should bode well for him being able to handle, NBA defenders, at the next level, just because he has just such a deep bag of moves to get to, and his change of speeds and his hezzies are already very good. So he should be able to get to where he wants to on the court at the NBA level. Now, moving on to another part of his game, which is his shooting, which is very impressive. Specifically his spot up shooting. He has range on his spot up shots, and he's an extremely confident shooter. There's not a shot that Hugo Besson has seen that he doesn't like. And he will shoot shots from the parking lot. He will take catch and shoot shots from the parking lot. That is how confident he is in his shot. And he's also a very good movement shooter as well. He's able to come off stagger screens, come off flare screens and whatnot. And he's able to get open shots, and that's very impressive. Being able to see a guy who can not only shoot as a spot up shooter, but also be a movement shooter, which is something that only adds to his repertoire at the NBA level and adds to his versatility as an offensive offensive piece, right? If you have a guy who can, just be having a guy who's a good spot up shooter, yeah, that's great. But if you're able to move off of screens, your coach can use you in a different manner of ways, which again is very impressive for Hugo Besson. And what I also like about his shot is that he just has a nice form. His mechanics are generally sound. He gets good elevation on his shots. I think that at times when he is, way out, I think there are times where he can get a little bit more elevation, but generally, I think he gets good elevation on his shots. And, also his release, he gets good elevation on his release as well. His guide hand tends to flare out, which is something that we will talk about later, but, generally, the elevation on his shooting hand is very good. He gets his elbow up nice and high, which, again, is something that you like to see coming from Hugo. So I expect him to be a plus shooter at the NBA level, if not at least an average shooter. Again, off ball. We'll talk more about his on ball shooting in just a bit, and also in the weaknesses part of the video. But still, very good shooter, plus shooter, especially off ball, which is something that I really like about Hugo. And moving on, kind of combining the first 2 points that I have made is just that he's, given the fact that he has a good handle and, he's a confident, smooth shot maker off the ball, you have to imagine that, he has shown some upside as being an on-ball creator, which he has for himself. And again, with that quick release, which is something that I really like about his shot, he can get his shot off in a minute, just like that, which is again extremely impressive and very important when you are going to be a self-creator, to have a quick release to get your shot up before bigger defenders can really get a hand on your shot. So you combine his handle with just his shot making. Again, he really likes to use those hezzies, and he loves his side steps as well. And again, as I state here, creating separation is a bit of a concern right now. He's not a plus athlete, and he doesn't really know how to really utilize all the space on the court right now. And what I would suggest to Hugo is to really watch someone like the ex Portland guard CJ McCollum, or even a player like Damian Lillard, where Damian Lillard does a great job of really utilizing those hezzies to kind of make his opponent fall asleep, and then he hits them with that sidestep. But the thing with that Dame was so special with that sidestep is that he would plant, if he was let's say he was going to his right, so let's say he had the ball in his right hand, right, and he was going to go to his right, he would plant his left foot, and he would just explode off that left foot, and it would just be so quick. And then when you combine that with Dame's quick release, that shot was pretty much unguardable, right? So Hugo really loves those kind of sidesteps. So what I would suggest to Hugo is to kind of watch some Dame footage so that he can really kind of pick up an aspect like that, where he really learns how to really, he's good at being able to change speeds and whatnot, but to really, get that down, if he can get that aspect of his game down, it would just only add to his self-creation, just because he'd be able to get off his shot so much more consistently. And I would also even suggest a player like CJ McCollum, where CJ McCollum is just so smooth with everything he does. He just has, a plethora of different moves that he can get to, and he's just able to stop on a dime and get a shot up, which is definitely something that Hugo isn't the best at right now. He's good at working on his own time, but if you ask Hugo to make like a split decision, stop right there, boom, get the shot up quick, even though he does have a quick release and everything, he can be kind of thrown off his game a little bit. So, to really just sharpen his tools is what I would suggest to Hugo in terms of, being a self-creator, and then also, maybe work on, really selling certain hezzies, and, really working on his footwork in order to, create better separation. But again, he's shown the upside. When you combine he has one of the better handles, if not one of the best handles in this class, combined with his quick release, solid form. There's definitely upside as of him being a shot maker. Then another part of his game is just his playmaking, specifically out of pick and rolls. He's able to make a lot of different passes in the book. Now, his willingness of a passer is something that we will talk about later, but just overall, his passing of what he's displayed is very, very impressive. He's able to make cross-court reads. He's able to make one-hand passes with, his right hand to the corners. Very good at dump-offs as well. So, his willingness as a passer is definitely something that he is going to have to work on. Is something that we will talk about in just a second. But overall, just the different passes that he's shown, it's not a matter of if he can make these passes, it's just a matter of how willing he is to make these passes, right? And again, that is something that we will talk about later. So you combine the passing with the shooting, with the self-creation, it's looking like a very pleasant package so far with Hugo Besson. And then moving on to the defensive side of the floor, where he's not a bad point of attack defender. He has decent lateral quickness, and he can be decently pesky, on ball. Even though the effort is definitely something that we will talk about later, and a different aspect of his defense, which is I really concerns me. I think he's overall not a bad point of attack defender, and I think as a weak side defender, I didn't really list it out, but he does a good job. Like he's able to see things happening. It's just a matter of him getting through actions, from a physical standpoint right now, which is something that we will talk about in just a second. Moving on to some of the concerns I do have regarding Hugo Besson. First up, I do want to talk about some of the mechanics in terms of his self-creation ability. Even though I did state that he is a very confident shooter, a very willing shooter, and he hasn't seen a shot that he doesn't like. Both on and off the ball. Specifically talking about his on-ball abilities. There are times where his mechanics can just be a bit flunky, and I think that helps play into his percentages being as poor as they are. Specifically from behind the arc, where there are a lot of times where his guide hand, as I state here, it will flare out. And what I mean by that is, I've seen a couple people in this class where they kind of have what I dub, the Darius Garland form, where, they'll shoot and, they'll get good extension on their shooting hand, right? But then their guide hand will kind of like flare out, if you guys seen it, you guys know what I'm talking about. And I've seen a couple people in this class kind of have that form, and Hugo doesn't necessarily have it all the time, but there's a lot of times where, when he is self creating, the guide hand kind of flares out, and it works for Darius Garland, but a lot of times, some of these, a lot of these people just aren't, the level of talent that Darius Garland is, especially not, Hugo Besson is a good player and everything, but he's not Darius Garland. So, I think, kind of working on, keeping his guide hand more consistent, keeping it more closer to the ball, elevating it a little bit more on the self creation, will definitely help, in terms of just, his consistencies and also his footwork. His base can just be a bit, too narrow. Sometimes there are times where you would like to see him just be a little bit more stable, in terms of his lower body. And, that just all has to play with, I think that's just reps. And I think that's all just getting consistent reps in. And I think it's all about practicing with a certain level of pressure in your shots in order to, fine tune your mechanics for the game, So I think what I would just suggest to Hugo in that case is just, try to go through your workouts and just try to have, live simulation in terms of, live defenders guarding him, when he gets off specific shots, when he is working, on his back and the different moves that he does have, just, have, maybe a quality defender, not necessarily, he doesn't have to be the best defender, but, just a guy that just gets pressure on him so that he can work on, ironing out the consistencies in his mechanics when he is self-creating. So again, that is something that he is going to have to work on, and that is something that he is going to have to improve at the next level if he does want to be an efficient self-creator. So maybe from day one he can get hot and whatnot, but that is definitely something that he's going to have to work on in order to be again an efficient self creator at the next level. Moving on to another part of his offensive game that does really scare me right now, and that's just his lack of athleticism. As I stated before, Hugo is not a plus athlete, and that can be seen in him trying to get by defenders, and it's not necessarily consistent right now. And what I mean by that is even though he does have the handles and everything, like he will juke out a defender or he will hit them with a hezzy and he'll get by them, but he doesn't necessarily have that first step or that burst right after he makes a move to really seal the defender off and really get past them. So that allows his defenders to kind of get in front of him. And again, he's playing in the NBL, which isn't a terrible league, but it's not so I wouldn't call it a good league. Like I think college level competition is better than the NBL, to be honest with you, from what I've seen. And I've watched a good amount of film combined with Hugo and Osman. So I mean, like I'm it's like if you're really struggling to seal off these level of athletes, what's going to happen at the NBA level when you got a guy like, I don't know, if you get switched on to like Mikal Bridges or Zaire Williams, I'm just thinking of long, lanky wings. They're going to pick your pocket like that because, you're just not able to seal them off consistently. So, and I don't know how much of this you can really work on. Of course, you can work on, like conditioning and stuff. But I feel like at this point in, a lot of these athletes' lives, they kind of are what they are athletically. So it is something that definitely worries me about Hugo. And I think that, it's just going to have to be a wait and see in terms of this, how much it's really going to impact him at the next level, just being able to consistently get by and seal off defenders and just, get past them. He's either going to have to take a significant step as, a self-creator, in terms of his handle and just his mechanics or just, his ability to just create separation. He's going to have to take, a major step in that in order to, consistently get by defenders at the NBA level, just because he's just not a plus athlete right now, and he just can't seal off defenders. And another part of his offensive repertoire that really scares me is just his finishing right now. It's terrible. I'm not gonna lie, his field goal percentage is as bad as it. I mean, it's shooting 30% from the field. I mean, I don't think I have to really tell you guys that he's a bad finisher right now. Right? I think you guys can just assume that by the stats. And it's terrible. I'm not gonna lie, his finishing is bad, and it's you combine him not being a plus athlete, right? He's not going to be some leaper. He's only 6'4", 200 pounds. And the NBL, granted, the NBL is a very physical league. It's a lot more physical than college, or even of course the NBA. There's a lot of contact that isn't called, in the NBL, but still, there's a lot of times where he just attacks the basket. And granted, he does get fouled a good amount of possessions, but he will just attack the basket and just have no type of plan whatsoever. He'll get to the rim, and then he just doesn't have any idea what to do. And then he's just not a leaper. He's not able to leap over or really finish through trees. And he gets to the rim, and then he doesn't have a plan when he gets there. He's kind of just will throw up a shot. And, there's a good amount of times where when Hugo Besson attacks the rim where the shot won't even hit the rim. That's how bad it is right now. And then, when you combine all this, the IQ is a bit of a question. Decision making, as I'm about to talk about, is a bit of a question. And then, the pace, he's not able to get by defenders consistently. He's not a great leaper. And then you combine that with just being a very poor finisher. He's not necessarily good with either hand. It worries me a lot. And for Hugo, I guess we'll talk about that in the next section. But for Hugo Besson to really find an NBA role, he's really gonna have to learn how to finish amongst the trees. And I feel like for this, I don't even know how much he can really improve on it, just because I feel like you kind of have it or not at this point. And it's granted, some of these calls are some of the contact that he does face at the rim in the NBL is going to be called at the NBA level, but still, it's just worrying right now, man. It's really worrying me. Granted, he can probably get better, a little bit in terms of his vertical. Maybe he can, learn how to just adjust to contact. But he's going to be facing a lot bigger, stronger, tougher, more talented defenders in the NBA level. If he's going to become even an average finisher, I think at most Hugo Besson is going to become an average finisher, and I think it's going to take a while for him to get there. Let's just say that. And then moving on, of course, as I just mentioned, the decision making. A lot of times he'll just take contested shots. As I stated before, his confidence, is great, but Hugo Besson hasn't seen a shot that he doesn't like in his life. So that leads to him often passing up. Whether that be an open roll man or an open shooter in the corner. Granted, he can make all those passes, beautifully, but just knowing the time and the place to, take a step back contested, long two, as opposed to hitting, a man in the weak side corner for an open three, right? That's just decision making. And I think he can fine tune that as he continues to grow as a player. And, of course, gets into a better developmental staff than where he is at New Zealand right now. And then on the defensive side of the floor, which is, again, something that really, really, really bothers me, is Hugo Besson will get played off the court a lot of times. And what I mean by that is he's just a terrible weak side defender right now. And it's not so much that he can read things going on, right? He'll see things going, but the league is just so physical. He just looks so physically overwhelmed out there that even if he does see, like, you can, if you follow his eyes on a variety of possessions, like, you can see him reading the plays, but he's just so physically overwhelmed that he just won't be able to get through certain screens, and it will lead to his man just having an open shot. And you really see this on ball. Like, defenders will attack him in pick and roll situations. They will get him switched onto the big man, and then they will just post him up, seal him off on the block, and Hugo Besson he can't do anything. So if he's being able to get played off the floor like this bad at the NBL, God knows what's going to happen at the NBA level for Hugo. So that is definitely something that I am really, really concerned with in terms of Hugo's game right now. Now moving on to what I believe to be Hugo Besson's outlook as a player at the NBA level. First up, I do want to discuss his floor, which I believe will be his role in the beginning stages of his career at the NBA level. And if nothing else improves for him, this is what he's going to look like as an NBA player. And that is an end of the rotation piece, and a guy who plays some spot G League minutes, here and there. And that's just because of the consistencies as both a shooter and as a decision maker just never really improves. So he's kind of like a microwave scorer here and there, but a guy who can't necessarily run an offense consistently, and a guy who is consistently attacked on the defensive side of the floor. So that's not a guy that you can have out there on the floor for an extended period of time. So as a result, that leads to him, being a guy who can see some minutes at the end of games. As a guy who can maybe get hot, give your team some points, but outside of that, doesn't really provide any value. Maybe some decent playmaking here and there, but again, outside of that, doesn't really provide your team with any value. And then moving on to his median outcome, which I believe to be the most realistic outlook for Hugo Besson's career, and that he's just a backup guard, a rotation piece for a team, and he acts as a spark plug scorer for an NBA team, where the handle gets a little bit better. Not the handle, excuse me. His ability to create separation becomes a little bit more consistent. But the decision making, just with his style of play, kind of holds him back from really being a true starting point guard in the NBA level. But he's able to come in, get hot, give your team some decent points here and there, but again, isn't necessarily going to be a floor general or anything. And then when you combine that with his defensive, I don't know how to put this, defensive missteps, we should say, where he immediate outcome is that he does get better in terms of maneuvering around screens and whatnot, and the weak side defense does improve, just in terms of his IQ and whatnot, just being able to just learning how to handle in learning how to handle physicality, right? As long as that improves just slightly, even if it does, it's still going to be an average, at best an average, most likely a mediocre, slightly below average defender. So again, not the best playmaker, but a guy who can come and get hot, give your team some points in bunches. But again, isn't a mediocre to average defender. So again, that holds him back in terms of him being a true starter. And then again, we have a ceiling, which is a quality starting point guard, where decision making gets better, and the self creation gets becomes consistent, and that allows him to run an offense for as much defensive weaknesses as he does have. Just being able to read an offense, being able to make the right reads, set up NBA offenses, and also be able to not only space the floor, but also be a guy who can get off his own shot. That's a quality offensive piece, at 6'4", right? And then when you consider on the defensive side of the floor, for him to be a quality starting point guard, that means that he would have to become an average defender. And that would just mean that he figures out just, maybe, the physicality is a bit over too much for me. So, maybe he puts on some weight, and then as well as just, being able to learn, again, as I stated with, the median outcome, just learning how to deal with the physicality of the NBA level. And then for my comparison, I couldn't really come up with anything solid. I've seen some CJ McCollum thrown around here and there, but I just don't see it. I think CJ McCollum is just a lot more polished than Hugo. I saw some Jordan Clarkson, where a guy who did show some slight playmaking upside, but a guy who I don't think they necessarily play all that much. Well, I guess they do, but the reason why I decided to choose, and I state shades of Jordan Clarkson, just because I see them fulfilling the same role in the NBA as I stated, being a rotation guard who comes in and lights up a team, and serves the team as being a spark plug scorer, and that's what I see Hugo Besson's ultimate role being, or his most likely outcome being at the NBA level. So I just put Jordan Clarkson in terms of that level of a comparison, right? A guy who Jordan Clarkson isn't, he's a mediocre defender, and a guy who's not much of a playmaker, can make some decent reads here and there, but it's just the IQ and just the style of play, right, holds him back from being a true guard or lead guard. And you can throw in other comparisons for Hugo, but I just wanted to throw in shades of Jordan Clarkson, just because they would fill out a similar archetype at the NBA level. So it's Hugo Besson, a guy who, again, I expect to be the median outcome, rotation guard, decent rotation guard who can come in and give your team some points. And a guy who I believe will be a early to mid second round pick at the latest. And that's the end of the video, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know what you guys think about Hugo Besson in the comments. Do you guys think I got it just about right with him, him being an early to mid second round pick? Or do you guys think he should be even higher? Do you guys think he's capable of being a first round pick in this year's draft? Let me know what you guys think about Hugo Besson in the comments. And aside from that, that's the end of the video, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe if you haven't already. And if you have subscribed, please share the channel with a friend, share the video with a friend. I want to keep growing the channel, keep growing the community that we have here. And again, aside from that, that's the end of the video, guys. Thank you so much for watching, and please take care and have a blessed day. Peace.